Hey guys, welcome to the Powerful Man Show, where we help married businessmen save their marriages without having to talk about it, get unstuck, and gain clarity in their lives. As I like to say, life is too short for average. I'm your host, Doug Holt, with my co host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. Now let's get this started. Tim, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well indeed. The sun is shining. I get to go out on the paddleboard a little bit later on and meet up with a friend, have a beer or two in the sun. So I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Also, a little tired. Kids were up late last night, but it's the nature of the beast. If you have young kids, as many of the guys listening to this completely understand, you got to roll with
Mhm.
it and wait for those times that you actually get to catch up on your sleep and actually talk eloquently. So we're gonna make it through this episode because I think this one's really important. A lot of guys have reached out. And really, the topic for today, guys, is what do you do when your wife shuts off communication? Now, this can happen in several stages, right? But typically and specifically, what I'm talking to are the men that their wife has actually physically left the residence, has physically left the house. Now, for some of you guys, your wife has shut off communication while you're in the house with her. So she's emotionally detached or separated. So I want you guys to listen to it from that lens as well. But specifically today, Tim, what I want to talk about are when for these men, what we call saved it till too late. Their wife has left. She's got an apartment. She's moved in with a buddy, a friend, a family member, or something along those lines. And really, right, she's left, but she won't even return a phone call. She won't return your text. And yeah, you've made mistakes. You've made mistakes in the past, and the truth is you're working your butt off to correct those mistakes. But then how do you communicate that to your wife? How do you let her know that you're a changed man and that you're sorry? How do you let her know that you want her back and you're willing to work on it? And really what happens here, and the biggest problem for men, is they're sitting at home, right? They're trying to reach out to their wife. They're trying to text her. They're calling her. They're hitting her up on social media. She's not responding. And then in their darkest hour, they're wondering, what is she doing? Who is she doing it with? Right?
Mhm.
Why won't she return my call? Why doesn't she forgive me for my mistakes? Doesn't she realize I'm trying as hard as I can? Doesn't she realize I've been providing for the family? I've been working my butt off. And yeah, I've screwed up from time to time, but really, I've been doing everything I can. So guys find themselves in this situation, Tim, and really let's tell them what they need to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys in this position, right? Something that trips them up is impatience and neediness. It's almost like the guys that trip up in this situation make the change for the wrong reason. And because they make the change for the wrong reason to win her back, when they aren't getting the validation or the attention from her, typically they slow down, they fall off the wagon. And all that does for her is prove, I knew it. I knew it.
Yep.
Or the flip side is, let's say some guys are being consistent, but this is still in the back of the mind, and the wife begins to take down her wall, and then he still trips up because he's being impatient and doing it for the wrong reasons. Again, she says, I knew it. And that wall gets built higher than it was up before. And the reality is, one, you've got to do it for the right reasons, make the change that is. And two, it's all about the actions that you have. It's the actions that are the things that are really going to, well, speak louder than words. I know it sounds cliche, um, but it is.
Yeah, it reminds me, and we were talking about this offline, it reminds me of when my wife and I split up, right? Things were really bad. And I actually was the one to first leave. And we weren't really communicating, right? We were both kind of, I would say, a foot and a half out the door. And during that time, I really took stock for my side of the street, as we call it, things that I was doing. Prior to that, I was, blaming her for all the things that she needed to change and do wrong. And yeah, that's a few things that I did. But during that time, I really put a focus of working on myself, right? Working on being the best version of me that I could possibly be. And I did it for a couple of reasons. One, um, you know, I knew I wasn't being the best version of me, right? And so I wanted to show up as a better person. Two, frankly, if things didn't work out with my wife, I wanted to be the best version of myself because I was going to go back on the market, so to speak. And
Mhm.
three, when I realized I did want to get back with my wife and I wanted to work things out, I wanted to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk and showcase who I was as this not newer version of me, but the realer version of me, the more,
Mm.
etched out version of me. And I
Mhm.
distinctly remember the first time my wife and I talked and actually got together, right? She saw me. And when she saw me, you could tell there was a new air about me. I didn't talk about all the things that I was doing. I didn't talk about the work that I was diving deep into at first. Eventually, I explained things because she asked, but she knew there was a new presence about me immediately. She could tell, she could detect it, she could feel it. And
Okay.
we always say your presence comes into the room before you do, and it walks in there. And so she knew that the things that I had been talking about, I was actually doing, and I was doing them with some consistency, which gave her security as well.
Yeah. And I think a key thing you did there is you didn't speak them up. A lot of the guys, when they're doing it for the wrong reasons and they're doing it to prove to win her back, they will talk up the changes they are making in order to almost say, hey, look at me, look at what I'm doing. Let me show you, let me prove to you. Whereas when you're doing them for yourself and you don't need that validation from your wife, like you didn't, right? Um, you're getting it from yourself and you know yourself whether or not you're doing the work. You know whether you are down in San Diego actually diving into the darker corners of yourself to figure out what's there. And that in itself makes you feel good because you feel like you're growing, which is one of your big values, right? Growth and contribution. And therefore, when you then show up with that presence, and like you said, yeah, your energy walks into the room long before you do. And also, women feel what you say more than hear what you say.
Yep.
And when you don't say a word and your presence does all the talking, I mean, that in itself, it creates mystery, it creates impact. It really plays with the imagination, right? Which is one of the biggest sexual organs for a woman. So I just want to highlight that point because playing it down, we always talk to the guys when they come out of the alpha reset. They're really excited, aren't they, to share this new perspective, to share what they've realized about themselves. They are visibly different. Like we've had guys change color quite literally. And one of the words of advice we always give them when they go home is, hey, look, guys, we get that you've had an amazing immersive experience over the past 3 or 4 days, but you're going to go back home and your environment is going to be the same. People are not going to know what you've been through. Your wife isn't going to know. Your kids aren't going to know. Your staff aren't going to know. So just play it down. Let your actions do the talking. Let your presence do all the work. And that's one of the things that creates a big shift in the people around them when they return.
Yeah. And when Tim says they change color, what he means is the color comes back. They go from pale to tan, not from white to green. But it's so true. And when you think about this, guys, you look at nature, right? There's so many truths within nature. And when you think about the wolf, which is the logo for the powerful man, you think about the alpha wolf, right? The alpha wolf needs to be as strong as possible for himself first and then for his pack. And then the alpha actually leads at the back of the pack, right? He leads at the back of the pack so he can make sure everybody else is okay. Now, us as men, right, we need to lead within ourselves first and foremost. And that means showing up with your actions. So, why does this all apply to, your wife shuts off communication? Well, to Tim's point earlier, if you're constantly blowing up her phone, that's a very needy energy and that repels somebody. That's a beta, energy. And so that's going to repel your wife, especially if your wife is a feminine woman, which, my guess is she's going to be 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, women naturally fall into that category. And if you wouldn't be listening to this podcast, actually, if that wasn't the case. So you're putting her on her back foot to fall into her masculine when you fall into your feminine, which is the needy energy. However, However, if you work on yourself, if you do the things we talk about, like the triad of connection. So you might say, hey, Doug, how do you do the triad of connection? The clean slate method can be done. Your coach will work you through it if you're in the activation method, right? Our flagship program, but it can be done with your wife not being able to talk to you. Like there's ways that men have successfully delivered a clean slate letter through the clean slate method. So you can do that. In the meanwhile, you got to do your alpha rise and shine. You got to do your alpha decompression. All of these things stack up from the Live Like a King system, right? You got to do these things as well. So when you do see your wife, right? When you do see her, she has a knowing, an actual knowing that you've changed. She knows that things are going to be different. She knows that things are changing. Now, we've had men in the movement who have been in this situation, right? And they've gone through the activation method and they've ran into their wife. Now, some stories, as you know, Tim, what happens is other people see the guy, right? They'll see him at the gym, they'll see him out socially, the husband, and word gets back to the wife about what he's done, what the change that everybody can feel inside of him, because it's electric, it's magnetizing. And then when he runs into his wife, they end up, having sex again. They end up, we've got guys that have been in the program for only a couple of weeks that have been in this situation, separation, divorce papers filed. Then they do the work deeply. They work with their coach and the other men in the brotherhood, right? That'll pull you forward. But they work with these guys. And then they've ended up going to Hawaii together and trips all over the world. And not that it has to be this grandiose, but this has happened to many men that have been in the program because feminine energy is able to change like that, just like that. And when a woman knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that you've changed and that change is going to stick, right? And you're going to be tested, and you should be tested, by the way. But when she has that knowing, right, that you are the alpha, you are going to be strong enough to be at the back of the pack to push everybody else forward, including her, right? That is when she'll make that shift. That's when not only lines of communication will open up, but complete shifts in your relationship can happen.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of the guys who ran a very successful, it was a doctor, ran a very successful surgery. And part of that was the working hours that went with it, right? I think you'll probably recall the man I'm talking about. And him and his wife were living separately. Communication had been shut off effectively. And she heard about him closing his surgery twice a week during two of the busiest times that previously he could never have been away from the surgery during that time. Never. Whereas now, hang on a minute, why is he closing the surgery twice a week at these two peak hours? And the reason for it is he was on the activation method calls and he was doing work on himself. And he didn't tell her, didn't make a big song and dance of it, didn't speak it up, didn't turn it into something. And that pulled her in. And it had her start asking questions. Hey, why are you doing this? Oh, it's just a group that I've joined so I can better myself. Okay. A week goes by, more questions come up, and eventually they actually end up moving back in together, and the relationship ends up being far better than it's ever been.
Yeah, I love that guy. I love that story. It's been an honor to be part of his journey. So when you think about this, right, that setting, right, and all guys go through this, and I get it, is your wife's out, you don't know what she's doing. You don't know who she's talking to. She's talking to her ex. Is she talking to the guy at the gym, or what she's doing? And usually this happens at night, right, guys? It's hard to get to bed. This is where you want to do two things, right? One, this is the time to focus on you. What are you doing that's so compelling that you don't have to go there down that dark tunnel, right? So that's working on yourself, right? Bettering yourself. Now, working on yourself sounds so weird, I guess, in some ways, because you can't put your fingers on your hands on it, so to speak. And this is where coaching comes in handy, right? Because you got somebody that can see your blind spots and walk you through them. But do something to work on yourself. Perhaps it's, listening to this podcast, or if you're like me, you watch these things on YouTube. Not that I watch Tim and I per se, but I'll watch other things that'll lift my spirits and my mind. Like that's where I go, like really to focus on bettering myself. And it's kind of edutainment, if you will, right? So you're getting some education, instead of just watching Netflix or Hulu or whatever else it may be. And the second thing is is find a community, a brotherhood, find a community of men who are either in a similar situation as you, but better, men that are on the rise. And the reason I say men that are on the rise is because so often you can think the solution is finding men that are in a similar situation, and then it becomes a victim fest and a bitch fest, so to speak. And that's what you want to stay away from, right? You don't want other people who are just looking for validation on their situation and attention because things are wrong, because that's just going to pull you back. You're going to be in the same position, kind of like a car stuck in the mud and just hitting the gas, tires spinning, right?
Mm.
Being in a group of men that are just playing the victim card is going to be the same thing. You want to find yourself a group of men who are on the rise. Their stock is rising. They're working on themselves. The reason, it doesn't mean you can't share things that are going bad, because you want to be real and authentic. Look, my life's not perfect. Tim's life's not perfect. And we talk about these things all the time. However, you want to be in a group of men who say, hey, there's a problem over here. Maybe it's your morning routine, just making it up, right? There's a problem over here. Anybody have a solution? And then you have a group of guys who go, hey, look, I get it. I got 2 young kids too. Here's what I did. Hey, I got this. I haven't been sleeping well either. Here's some solutions. Here's some resources. And maybe ideally, and this is my ideal, but that's why we've invented the Powerful Man to be like this. You have coaches and people who can moderate those conversations and say, look, there's a masterclass on this over here. And hey, this is what we've helped thousands of men. This process works, 9 times out of 10, you'll get success with just a little fine tuning here. And so, yeah, you can share the hardships. That's part of life, but don't share the hardships for validation, because that's just slipping back into old patterns that make you more of a beta or a nice guy, right? And that's why we call it deactivated, right? You want to get from deactivated to activated. Now, activated men, and they may complain a little bit, but really they're pointing out problems for progress. Give me a solution so I can be better here. And when you start applying those solutions to your life, my guess is things will change. You'll start doing those things you've always dreamed or talked about. And when your wife sees that, and she will hear about it from other people, because you'll substantially change. When she sees that, you'll really have the opportunity to open those lines of communication again with her. And then you can start showcasing the man that she's always known you to be. And really, that's all it is, right? Your wife, when she married you, she saw the activated version of you. That's the man she said I do to. And over time, man, society, work has beat you down. I get it. You've tried your best. I get it. I was in the same boat. And you become a nice guy, because that's the solution we all want to do. And then we become deactivated. We've lost our mojo, so to speak. Not in business for most of us, but at home. For some reason, we've lost our mojo. And this is where the activation method, or becoming activated, comes in. And that's why we invented that program. And that opens up those lines of communication. So if your wife is sitting there and communication is not happening, right? Do one of those 2 things. Double down on your personal development, right? Because there's only one thing you can change in this situation or affect, and that's you. 2, find a way to surround yourself with men who are on the rise, with men who are doing the work, with men who aren't just complaining and nagging and just talking about sports, but they're talking about sports and bettering themselves not only for themselves, but for their families, so they can be the alpha wolf at the back of the pack, leading their pack through good times and bad.
Yeah, I love it. I think one point that's very relevant is as well, you might not know what she's doing, but she also doesn't know what you're doing either.
Yep.
So, the more that, like you said, you actually go and become a man who's interesting, who follows the passions that he has always wanted to follow, right? But just hasn't for whatever reason or excuse or busyness. Because, like you said, the activated version of you is an interesting man. He's a passionate man. He's a purposeful man. These all go towards building character, which is what a woman values most in a man, is their character. So allow that to play to your strength as well. You don't know what she's doing, but she also doesn't know what you're doing either.
Yep. All right, guys. So you've had some insight here. Communication's broken. It's time for you to step up to the line. What I want you to do right now is write down your top 3 takeaways from this. And when you look at those top 3 takeaways, what is the 80-20? What is the big lever that you could pull to move you forward faster? Compress time. Time, we all know, is our most valuable resource. How can you shorten the gap and get results today? Gentlemen, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next time on The Powerful Man Show. All right, guys, that's a wrap for this episode. But as I always say, in the moment of insight, take massive action. You see, there are 2 types of men that listen to a podcast like this. Those that go on from one podcast or show to another, just hoping things are going to change and realizing that they're going to be in the same place month after month, year after year. You see, I was this guy, so I completely get it. You may just not be ready. But there's also a second man that listens to a show just like this. And this is a guy who takes massive action so they can shorten the learning curve, compress time, and get results to be the wolf. See, wolf is an acronym for wise, open, loving, and fierce. Now, ask yourself, which one am I? And just be honest with yourself there. And there's no judgment on my end, but if you're ready to move from deactivated deer mode, which is defend, excuse, explain, react, to activated wolf, wise, open, loving, and fierce, then go over to thepowerfulman.com/grow and go there now. In fact, I'll make it super easy for you. I will even put the link right in the description here, so you can just click it and go over there now to learn more. Guys, in the moment of insight, take massive action. Go from deactivated to activated, because like I said, life is too short for average. And I'll see you on the next episode.